Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to explain the topic about discourse analysis, the definitions, concept, and also the applications in linguistics. So, let's get started. So, what is discourse analysis? Discourse analysis is the study of how language is used in context. It focuses on how language is used in communications to create meaning in both spoken and written forms. The goal is to understand how individuals and groups communicate, how ideas and values are conveyed, and the social structures that are involved in communications. Now let's take a look at the history of discourse analysis. Discourse analysis emerged in the 1960s as a response to earlier structuralist approaches in linguistics. Key figures in its development include Zelig Harris, who first introduced structural linguistics and later focused on the organizations of text and spoken communications. So, remember Zelig Harris. Now, let's see its developments. On 1960s until 1970s, early work was shaped by sociolinguistics and pragmatics, emphasizing how language functions within society and daily communications. On 1980s, the field began exploring the relationship between language and power, which led to the rise of critical discourse analysis or CDA. And on 1990s until now, the introductions of multimodal approaches blending text with nonverbal communications such as images and body language. So the key figures on its developments is first Herbert A. Simon study how discourse shapes social interactions. Michael Foucault, his theories of power and knowledge became influential in CDA, and Norman Fairclough is a leading figure in CDA, focused on the connections between language and power dynamics. Now, let's see the types of discourse analysis. The first is conversations analysis or CA, focus on the structures of conversations and the way turn taking and interactions occur in communications. Second one is critical discourse analysis or CDA. It's analyze how language is used to maintain and reinforce power relations, ideologies, and societal structure. And then narrative analysis. It examines the structures of narratives, looking at the roles of characters, plot, and the overall structures of the history. And the last one is multimodal discourse analysis. It analyzes communications that involves multiple models of expressions such as text, image, and gestures. There are some assumptions in discourse analysis. First one is language is socially embedded. Language cannot be separated from its social context. It reflects the values and norms of the society in which it is used. Meaning is interactive. Meaning is negotiated through interactions between speakers, listeners, and the context in which the communication takes place. Language is actions. Language is used to perform actions such as requesting, commanding, questioning, or expressing emotions. Now, let's see approaches in discourse analysis. First one is structuralism. Focus on the underlying structures that govern language use and examines how linguistic units relate to each other. And then factionalism. It examines language based on its social functions and how it helps people achieve communicative goals. And then pragmatics. It focuses on how context influence the interpretations of meaning in communications. And also critical. It aims to uncover the power dynamics, ideologies, and social inequalities embedded in language use. Now let's see the details of the types of discourse analysis. First one is conversations analysis or CA. The focus is examines the structures of conversations, particularly the turn-taking mechanism and how speakers manage their exchange. The third thinking is who speaks, when, and how speakers manage the flow of conversations. Adjacency pairs, it patterns like questions followed by answers or greetings followed by response. Repair mechanism, how speakers correct misunderstanding or clarify statements during conversations. Let's move to the critical discourse analysis. The focus is investigates the relationship between language and power examining how discourse shapes social hierarchies and reinforces dominant ideologies. So the key themes is power, how language is used by powerful groups to control others, and then ideology, how language reflects and perpetuates societal beliefs and attitudes, and then hegemony, the way certain groups maintain dominance through language. For example, examining political speeches to uncover how leaders use language to manipulate public opinion or enforce policy agendas. Then, narrative discourse analysis. The focus is analyze the structures of stories or narratives to understand how meaning is created through narrative devices. Yeah, as the name, narrative discourse analysis. So it's about stories. So the key elements is plot, the sequence of events in a story, characterizations, the way characters are portrayed and interact within the narrative voice, the perspective from which the story is told, first person, third person, etc. For example, analyzing how stories of overcoming adversity in the media shape societal views on resilience and success. The last one is multimodal discourse analysis. The focus is studies communication that includes multiple modes such as text, image, body language, and audio. The key elements is visual, how image, color, and layout contribute to meaning, gestures, and facial expressions. It how nonverbal cues influence the interpretation of spoken words. And the last one is text. The role of written language is shaping meaning. For example, analyzing an advertisement that combines text, image, and music to sell a product. So there are some steps in conducting discourse analysis. First one is data collections. We gather spoken or written text, including conversations, media, or written documents. Second one is identifying structures. Identify key elements such as sentence structures, turns in conversations, or thematic patterns. The third one is contextual analysis. We examine the social, cultural, and situational context in which the discourse takes place. And the last one is interpretations. Draw conclusions about how the discourse creates meaning, influence perceptions, and reflects or challenges power dynamics. Now let's see the example of discourse analysis. It is one for conversations. As you can see, you can read the conversations, and the detailed analysis of this conversation is A initiates the conversation with a greeting and A questions. B responds with a greeting and answers to asked questions, followed by a reciprocal questions, and a response with an update on their state, showing politeness and returning the social exchange. So the speech acts of the example is inquiry showing mutual concern, and politeness as hello and how are you perform the speech acts of greeting and inquiry. Best, I'm doing great, and the reciprocal questions perform a response and a return. Both speakers use polite expressions to maintain rapport. Thanks and how about you suggest positive social interactions and respects. The contextual meaning is the language used in the conversation is informal, indicating a friendly relationship between the speakers. The exchange follows social norms or politeness, typical in casual conversations. Now let's move to the example of discourse analysis on media. The example is media tax. Government plans to reduce income tax for small business to encourage economic growth. The detailed analysis. So the context is the text is a news article aimed at informing the public about government policy change. And then language choices. The use of plans to reduce softens the statements, implying that the policy is still in progress. And then encourage economic growth frames the policy as beneficial, aligning with a positive agenda for small business. So the ideology of the text is the phrasing suggests that reducing tax for small business inherently positive, subtly promoting neoliberal economic policies. And in the power relations is the government is portrayed as an agent of economic improvement, indirectly reinforcing its authority and influence over economic decisions. So, discourse analysis is very important. Here is the importance of discourse analysis. First one is understanding social realities. It helps to understand how language shapes and reflects societal values, norms, and power relations. And then media influence reveals how media can shape public opinion and reforms certain ideologies. And then policy implications provides insight for creating more inclusive and fair policies based on language usage and its social implications. Now we are moving to the last part is conclusions. Discourse analysis provides crucial insights into the way language is used to shape social interactions, power structures, and individual perceptions. Different approaches like conversation analysis, CDA, narrative analysis, and even multimodal analysis offer unique perspectives for analyzing communications. It is a valuable tool for understanding how meaning is constructed, how power is reinforced, and how individuals relate to one another through language. Okay, everyone, that's all my explanations about this topic, discourse analysis. Hopefully, it will give positive influence for all of us. Thank you so much for watching and see you!